Hey guys, today we are taking leather, wood, linen and metal and turn it into the most fearsome fighter plane of the First World War, the Fokker D7F. Today we will start the Wingnut Wings Fokker D7F Hamann Göring edition. However, we will not build the Hamann Göring scheme. That's mainly because I find Göring's all-white pimp machine a bit boring from a modeling perspective. So with the help of this lifelike decal set, we're going to build Ernst Udet instead. But wait, there's more. We will also use this full set of aviatic Lozenge decals, fabric seat belts by HGW, some Taurus resin accessories to super detail the BMW engine, and last but not least, this super nice figure by Elan 13. So let's get started. The wooden instrument panel is a nice spot to kick this off. I really like this reddish wood tone that you can see on the reference pictures provided in the manual, even though it's from a reconstructed aircraft. I'm starting out with a base coat of Tamiya wooden deck tan. For the wood grain effect, I'm going with a mix of reddish brown and dark red oil paint. As in my last build, I'm going with a very subtle grain pattern, but if you want the pattern to be more pronounced, just add a bit more thinner to the mix. Once I'm happy with the pattern, it's time to literally seal the deal and provide our wooden board with a nice finish, using Tamiya clear paints. I'm using clear red and smoke in a ratio of about 50-50. This treatment will not only provide our instrument panel with a nice red-brown hue, it will also provide the surface for decals thanks to the glossy finish of the Tamiya clear paints. Before applying those decals, I'm quickly picking out details with brass and black. And once that is done, we can finally bring them on. Just out of habit I'm using a setting solution, but I think water would work equally fine. After sealing in the decals with VMS satin varnish, there's nothing much more left to do than adding the starting magneto and the pressure pump for the oil tank. Now off to some more wood. For the floor panel, I'm aiming for a brighter wood tone and I'm therefore using ivory as a base coat. And consequently I'm also using a brighter oil paint for the grain pattern. If you want to add some wear and tear to your floor panel, you can add a few scratches with a toothpick. I finished the part off with Tamiya clear paints again, this time with orange. Some very subtle pin wash to add some dirt and grime. Some less subtle oil wash on the aluminum parts. And we reach the final step. I'm preparing a small mix of dust and earth-colored pigments. Once I'm happy with the tone, I slightly sprinkle them on the floorboard. But just a little bit, I really only want the slightest reminiscence of earth and dust on the bottom. Something like this, yes. The seat in the Fokker was built from sheet metal. The seating surface was then either coated in linen, leather or Lozenge. The pre-cut Lozenge details are provided with the aviatic kit. I will go with the leather option however, because I simply like adding as many different materials as possible to my build. Before we are bringing the airbrush out, I am masking off the back side of the seat with AK masking putty. Then I'm laying down the base coat. I am going for a medium brown tone that is not too dark and not too bright either, and ideally has some nice red tones in it. Linoleum brown from Tamiya checks all these boxes for me. In the next step we are going to add some wear and tear to the leather. To do so, I'm sponge chipping some buff color on edges and surface areas where abrasion would most likely appear. Following this step, I'm thinning down some black-brown oil paint. The exact color you're taking doesn't really matter too much here. What is important is that it's considerably darker than your base coat. I'm covering the whole seat with my oil mixture and I will let it sit for about 10 to 15 minutes. Once that time has passed, I am blending in the oils with a soft brush. In the end, you're left with a nicely modulated surface that contains a lot of different brown tones. But hey, let's not stop here. To add even more variation to the brown, I'm stippling in some ochre to those areas where you would naturally see the most wear and tear, such as the arm and headrest, or the edge where the legs were constantly scrubbing on. And all that's left to do then is spray the backside of the seat in aluminum. Lastly, I stippled on a patina of Abteilung smoke to make the seat look less pristine. However, I accidentally deleted the footage, so you have to take my word for it and see from the final result. So let's jump off to a new adventure, and by new adventure I mean the back wall of the cockpit. The aviatic decals are printed on a transparent decal paper, so I'm laying down a white base coat as the foundation. I'm planning to do the heavy lifting with post shading. However, I apply some pre-shading with Tamiya smoke as well, just out of curiosity. Before we start decaling, I'm quickly brush painting the framework in RLM2. I'm adding some VMS acrylic paint retarder to ease the brush application, and I'm going really sloppy here because I will need to do some touch-ups once the decals are applied anyway. Then we can finally get to the protagonist of this part. The aviatic decals have two main advantages compared to the Wingnut Wings original. First, they're most likely more historically accurate when it comes to the Lutzangle color scheme. And second, they have a really nice textile texture that makes them look like the real deal. The aviatic instructions tell you clearly to not float the decal in water, but rather moisten the backside of it with a brush. And being the law-abiding citizen that I am of course following their orders. However, I'm blatantly ignoring the advice to not use setting solution because I had some issues when I slided the first one with water only. After a good night of drying time, I'm sealing the decals in with VMS matte varnish. Since the pre-shading wasn't as pronounced as I wish it to be, I'm applying some more post-shading with ammo shaders. The lacing is picked out with some Japanese uniform by Vallejo. Lastly, I'm adding a shadow brown oil wash to the lacing and to the framework. Admittingly, it's not my greatest decal work so far, so it's great that it happened on a part that will be largely covered by the seat in the end. Speaking of which, let's head over to another star of this show, the HGW seat belts. I read from a lot of people that complain that they are a pain to assemble. However, I will show you 3 simple tricks that make the whole task less painful. The first, and maybe most obvious one, is to paint all the photo etched parts in one piece while they're still on a sprue. I'm brushing on a coat of VMS metal primer, and then I hit them with RLM2. Trick number 2 is not to cut them directly where the belt ends. Instead, cut them with the connector stripe that connects them with the sprue. Those will become your best friends when you thread the belts through the buckles. I'm twisting the belts between my fingertips to make them less stiff and a little bit crumbled. The third and maybe most important trick is to leave all photo etch parts on the sprue until you have completely threaded through the belt. This helps you significantly to control the parts in your hand and takes a lot of struggle out of the whole task. Once the threading is done, you can cut the completed belt from the PE sprue and start gluing the loose ends with super glue. Before we attach the belts to our seat, I'm thoroughly sealing them with 3 coats of matte varnish. This is because I want to hit them with an oil wash in the next step, and I definitely don't want the textile to soak up any of this. After about 10 minutes or so, I'm blending the oil paints with this ridiculously oversized brush. And finally, we can attach the belts to the seat. And here we go. If you enjoy step-by-step guides or videos like this in general, feel free to subscribe, like and do all this YouTube shizzle. It really helps the channel and keeps the motivation high. The Fokker D7 is often recommended for beginners because it doesn't have a lot of outside rigging. However, it does have some rigging on the inside and we're going to tackle this right now. As in my last build, I'm going to use gas patch 148 turnbuckles, 1mm fishing line and a 0.5mm breast tube. Oh, and let's not forget about the super professional DIY high-tech template. It may look like something you find in the trash, but it's a trustworthy companion when it comes to cutting the breast tube in pieces of equal length. So let's tighten our rigging. Step 1. Thread a piece of fishing line through the breast tube. Step number 2. Grab yourself a turnbuckle and thread the fishing line through it as well. Lastly, and most annoyingly, take the fishing line so that it forms a loop around the turnbuckle and thread it back through the breast tube. Now we can recklessly tighten the loop around the turnbuckle's neck. It's important to note that the stabilization rigging on the Fokker was double-sided, but that's not really adding any difficulty. What is adding difficulty though, is drilling out the microscopic guidance parts on the control stick and the rudder pedals. In addition to the control lines that are shown in the manual, I'm also adding the cables for the machine gun triggers and for the gas lever. Those were fixed to the control stick with metal clamps, which I'm imitating with Tamiya masking tape. Now let's paint this bad boy. NATO Black by Tamiya is just the right color. A mix of semi-gloss black and German grey is just the right color for this. The wooden grip handles on the control stick receive a base coat of AK ivory and a grain pattern made from Abteilung burnt umber. The footrest on the rudder pedal is receiving the same pigment mix that we used for the cockpit floor earlier. Next on the list are all the metal parts, namely the ammunition box and the fuel tank. I'm starting out with my standard treatment of Black Mr. Surfacer. Note that I mask all the mating surfaces that will go into the airframe because it's really critical to protect them from overspray. If you wonder why you have fit issues on a kit that has a worldwide reputation for a perfect fit, it's very likely because you have paint on the mating surfaces. The shiny aluminum finish is really nice. However, I want to go for the look of this machined aluminum that I found in this reference book here. The photo here is from a reconstructed aircraft, so take it with a grain of salt. To recreate the look, I'm going to use this Uschi van der Rosten spraying template. I'm quickly passing over with a very diluted mix of silver paint. That's just the right amount so that the outlines of the dull spots are not too sharp. For the fuel tank, I'm choosing the bare press metal finish instead of the dark green protection coat. This piece has a huge potential for scratch builders, but since it will be completely hidden, I will not go overboard here. However, I just can't help myself, but I have to recreate those soldier bead lines. To round things up, and to make the parts look a bit less pristine, I'm treating them with an almost black oil wash. This works wonders on any metal parts, but it shines especially on the brass. The firewall that separates the engine area from the cockpit compartment receives some extra dirt and grime with ammo shaders. Also, let's not forget that it was directly behind the engine, so let's add some diarrhea-inducing castor oil stains. Oh, and just 2 words on that linen part up here, because I didn't show it on video. It's a super simple effect that I achieved with a base coat of Tamiya Dunkelgelb that is then covered with a linen weave effect decal by Aviatik. Guys, it never fails to amaze me how much work you can put in those wing-not-wing cockpits before you actually start assembling anything. But finally, we are at the point where we can put parts together. I modified what I think is the gas lever with 2 missing cables. That also means 2 more metal cranks from Tamiya tape. Now let's get serious and connect the middle compartment with the frame. It's a decisive moment because it will show if all the masking efforts we went through were worth it. Whew, guess the first one's a charm this time. We still need to add this metal rod that connected the gas level with the engine. Okay guys, I know this has been a long build already, but bear with me, we are almost there. Before we add the missing parts, I'm quickly bending these 3 copper wires to shape and fix them below the ammunition box. These simulate the pipes that connect the engine and the gas tank with the instrument panel. You might disagree, but it's not necessary to connect them technically correct, because all you will see in the end is the small part that comes out under the instruments. Once they are glued in place, I'm quickly adding a light blue patina with oil paints. With that out of the way, let's put on the floorboard, aka the Kraken. Once the seat and the backbone have been glued in, we can finally arrange some of these annoying control lines. Compared to its left counterpart, the right side of the frame is assembled quite quickly. I'm using a clamp to stretch in the control lines while I fix them with CA glue on the back side of the cockpit wall. The weight of the clamp is enough to keep them tight at any time. With that done, we're good for the final spurt. We just need to add in some accessories such as the instrument panel and some smaller parts of the framework. And with that, let's call it a day. It really was a fun build so far, despite the fact that these frame-based cockpit constructions are always a bit tricky to assemble. In the next episode, we're going to take all our hard work and hide it into the fuselage, never to be seen again. So don't forget to subscribe and to hit the bell button to witness directly when I cry sweet tears over burying all this beautiful work. If you're interested in the reference book that I used throughout the build, they are freely available online and I will leave you the link in the description. With that said, I hope to see you all again in 2023 and I wish you a great holiday time. See you guys!